Hi, my name is Mohammed Affair, and today I'll be talking about the history of Australia. The first group of people that came to Australia was the Aborigines, who arrived from Southeast Asia. The Aborigines then spread throughout the mainland and Tasmania. In 1770, Captain James Cook was the first person to explore the east of Australia when he called New South Wales. In 1788, British Captain Arthur Phillip made a penal colony in Sydney Cove which carried 800 criminals. Next slide. In 1850, gold was discovered in New South Wales and several other locations. This was known as the gold rush. The population in Australia increased. Unfortunately, Aborigines were treated poorly and their numbers decreased. In 1856, Australia was the first country to have a secret ballot. In 1895, South Australian women will gain voting rights. By 1901, most Australian women can vote. In 1911, Canberra was founded and is now known as the capital of Australia. Lastly, in 1948, Australia began a scheme for immigration from Europe. Over the next 30 years, more than 2 million people arrived, about one third of them from Britain and hundreds of them from Italy, Germany, Greece, and Germany.
Hi, my name is Michaela Jones, and I'm going to be talking about the cost of living in Australia. So speaking of migration, if you're looking to migrate to the beautiful state of Australia, here are some things you might want to know. In a 2019 report, Australia was ranked number 1, 2, and 3 of the best places to live, those being Vienna, Melbourne, and Sydney. They scored perfect scores in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. A typical semester at college in Australia would be from $15,000 to $30,000, and they have a universal health care system called Medicare that provides free insurance for permanent residents there, and it's financed through general tax revenue. So you really don't have to pay anything to have insurance. For public transportation, Australia has a relatively inexpensive cost for the ferry, bus, train, and rail that they provide. Next slide. The minimum wage, specifically in Sydney, is on average $20. Since this minimum wage is considered a livable wage, when you go to restaurants, it's not considered rude not to leave a tip for your waiter. However, anything under 10% is generally acceptable. If you're looking at renting an apartment in Sydney, Australia, it's going to be around $480 to $550 a week. With all that being said, the price for things such as food, shopping, or eating out is generally going to be close to that which we pay in California.
Hi, my name is Elijah, and I'm going to be talking about destinations in Australia. This slide is going to be about tourist destinations. Sydney Opera House is most famous in Australia. I feel like it's the first thing that people think about when they say Australia. It's surrounded by water on 3 sides, and you can see beautiful views inside and out. Take tours of the theaters and the different restaurants inside. It is one of the world's best architectural icons. The second is the Great Barrier Reef. It was originally created back in 1975 to protect the fragile ecosystem. But it is now one of the most popular places for tourists to snorkel and dive and see beautiful coral reefs. The third is the Daintree National Park. This is one of the oldest ecosystems on the earth, actually. It has 2 sections, one beautiful rainforest that leads to white sandy beaches and the coral sea, and the other section is just beautiful crystal clear waters over granite boulders. If you wanted to visit Australia, but not in a touristy way, these are 2 local places that I found that locals really do love to do year round. Poyser Lane is one. It's beautiful art covered laneway that you may see artists covering. Sorry, you may see artists when you walk down there covering old murals. There's always beautiful art, beautiful colors all around to look at. And last but not least is the night markets at Queen Victoria Market. These happen year round, but there may be things that you can see in the wintertime that you might not see in the summertime. And it's a beautiful thing for everyone to go to. There are retail stores and food vendors there. Something for everyone.
Hello, so my name is Anais Corona and I will be speaking of the interesting details in Australia. So the first one I will be speaking of is Tasmania. So Tasmania is an island that is found very close southern part of Australia, and it is known to actually have the cleanest air that is known. So it is just simply beautiful, and a lot of people do like to go and just breathe in the freshness. And as well as the legal drinking age is a few years younger than ours, so I found that very interesting because their legal drinking age is 18 years old. As well, that the average Australian is found to be drinking up to 83 liters per year of beer. And as for the voting, I found it very interesting because voting is compulsory. So it is known that in Australia that once you hit 18 years of age, there is practically it's practically mandatory to go ahead and vote, and if you don't, there is a fine. So there is a $72 fine for any Australian or any individual who's living in Australia and decides to not vote. Besides that, besides there being a fine, over 80% of Australians still find themselves not voting. So they actually prefer to pay the fine over going in and vote. Some other interesting details that I did find out about Australia are the termite mounds. So I found this very interesting simply because the termite mounds are the tallest animal-made structures here on Earth. There has been photos of individuals that I was looking through, and they're standing by it, and it's like you could put 3 people and it will still be way taller than any individual. So they're up to, many of them start at like 8 meters, and they go anywhere from, they're very, very tall. So, and Australia is also one of the driest continents that we do have other than Antarctica. So many Australians do find themselves living by the Bay Area simply because the rest of Australia is very, very dry. And the last interesting detail is the dingo fence. So I found this very interesting because I did put this fence up just to go ahead and stop dingoes, as I also provided a picture of them from coming through. So the dingo fence is usually, it stretches from 5,600 kilometers, so it's known to be 3 times the Great Wall of China. And dingoes, to many individuals, even myself, I thought it looked very similar to any other dog, but they're actually most compared to wolves. So you're actually not even allowed to keep them as a pet, but many of them are saying that they really don't do anything, but everybody has had separate experiences, so they're just not safe pets that anybody should be keeping.
My name is Tyrese Temple, and I'll be talking about the wildlife, animals, and insects of Australia. The first insect I wanted to talk about was the huntsman spider, which gets its name from its speed and its hunting abilities. Surprisingly, from its size, it's not dangerous to humans, it's non-venomous. So if you do come across one, it might scare you from the size, but just know that it's non-venomous and it will not harm you. It's pretty big, it's 15 centimeters across all of its legs, and it's mostly spotted in Australia, but it also can be spotted in other tropical areas such as New Zealand. If you do want to look out for this insect and try to avoid it, it can be found on old bark trees, or it could be hide under bark as well. The next animal I want to talk about was the Tasmanian devil, which can only be found in Tasmania as of right now. It used to be found all over Australia, but they did become endangered after a while. So now you can only find them in Tasmania. They help control the introduced animals such as feral cats and red foxes as well, which is a good thing for the state of Tasmania, because they do have a problem with animals becoming reproduced a little bit too fast, especially with feral cats and red foxes. So they do like this animal and having it around. Surprisingly, the Tasmanian devil is not dangerous to humans, so if you do come across one, don't be scared, it will not harm you. The next animal I want to talk about was the Australian southern cassowary. It can jump 1.5 meters off the ground, which is pretty big for an animal, pretty big jump. They do have sharp claws, and when they want to catch their prey, they do pounce up and pounce downwards towards their prey and engage their claws in whatever they're trying to catch. They can be potentially dangerous to humans, so if you do see one, I would advise to stay away from it. And they also are great sprinters. They can run up to 50 kilometers per hour, which is 31 miles per hour. The next picture I wanted to show was spider frost. It's not an insect or an animal, but this is made by spiders in Australia. Spiders in Australia Australia is known to have some of the biggest and, most scariest spiders in the world. And I just saw this and I thought this was a pretty scary sight. This is actually a defense mechanism made by spiders to avoid heavy rain. It's common to see in Australia, so if you do see it, I would advise to avoid it, but there's probably no spiders in the spider frost. They probably all left. The next animal I want to talk about was the olive python. They can grow up, it's 4 meters long, can grow up to 13 feet. They typically eat birds, bats, and rats. They also have been spotted eating crocodiles too. They are harmless to humans, so if you do see one, regardless of its size and its intimidating looks, they will not harm you. Next slide. And this was an interesting fact I found about the wildlife and animals in Australia. 87% of mammals, 93% of reptiles, 94% of frogs, and 45% of birds can only be found in Australia and nowhere else in the world. So we can say that Australia holds that record for the most exotic animals in the world.